We got some college ball for you with Danny Kanell coming up, and also story time, like a horse on a pony or a pony on a horse. Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman have a new podcast coming up, so we're going to catch up with those guys. And I also want to talk about transferring quarterbacks and why Thursday Night Football was another example of why it's actually a good thing. And we've got Life Advice and the Alliance. Watching last night's game. Sorry, it's football. I don't have any baseball for you. Great game, though. This is about your level of interest in a quarterback matchup, most likely. I mean, other than just the NFL's on, so you're going to watch it. But Bo Nix and the Broncos dominant at New Orleans. They're now 4-3 somehow. Going up against Spencer Rattler, who was at one point the number one overall quarterback recruit in the entire country. I know some of you were introduced to him. I was as well through the Netflix series where he wasn't a great hang. But you know what? He was a kid. And who knows? I think at times, because you're a public figure at that age, it can be like almost unfair, even though I don't imagine a lot of us were like, man, that guy's awesome. So who knows? It was years ago when he was in high school. So I think for college football fans, it was kind of like the curiosity of Spencer Rattler, who was this big, high profile dude, 5-star, the whole deal, transfers from Oklahoma. South Carolina, ends up going in the 5th round where, he talked about like having the chip on his shoulder. Can't believe he lasted that long when he's looking at other guys that he was in the same recruiting class as going higher than him. I think there was a curiosity from that. And when I saw his action in last week's game against Tampa, and I talked about it on Monday, just as an aside, like he's not going to be like other rookie quarterbacks. He's going to let it fly. And you know what? It was bad. It wasn't very good. But this game, there's not really a ton to break down here. It was just a matchup of your curiosity of a first rounder in Bo Nix versus a guy who's a 5th rounder. You probably know if you're a huge college football fan and just see what it would look like. So if you go back and look at the history of these two, in 2019, Bo Nix was a 4-star out of Alabama. He was the number 2 dual threat QB. And for those that don't know, they'll break it up into pro style QBs and dual threat QBs. The number 1 overall dual threat QB recruit that same year was Jaden Daniels, who ended up at Arizona State and then LSU and won a Heisman, right? Also in 2019, Spencer Rattler was the number 1 overall QB, pro style. He was the only 5-star on 247. And, we know the backstory of Nix. Like Nick's father plays at Auburn. He goes to Auburn, plays in that game as a freshman against Oregon. And it's like all of this hope. And then it just kind of gets worse and worse. His 3rd year, he got benched in the Georgia game for TJ Finley. There was this weird Auburn TJ Finley experience where they were somehow convincing themselves that he was a real option. He gets hurt, Bo Nix does, against Mississippi State, and then he transfers to Oregon, and he puts up massive numbers. I mean, I know we all know these because it was just last year, but just to remind folks, over 4,500 yards, completed 77% of his passes. His touchdown interception ratio was 45-3, and he came in 3rd in the Heisman voting. Rattler, same class, and also in his 3rd year, right? He gets to Oklahoma. He's going into his 3rd season. He's the preseason Heisman favorite. And then he's benched for Caleb Williams in the Texas game. And his personal coach, I think around November of that season, said, look, he's going to go somewhere else. All sorts of schools were listed, and he ends up going to South Carolina. Look, he was good. He was good at South Carolina. It wasn't insane. I don't know that anything was as good as his 2nd year at Oklahoma, but it was good enough for Spencer Rattler still to get drafted, right? Maybe it was the profile, maybe it was the high school stuff, but there had to be enough on tape in the South Carolina seasons, those 2 years he was there, for him to even get drafted as a quarterback, because even that's hard, right? So why am I telling this story? Why am I talking about this, right? Well, there's a reason. The reason I bring this up is that in the last few weeks, Jesse Palmer's been on the show. Todd McShay comes on the show most Mondays. And both have talked about Garrett Nussmeier at LSU and complimenting his resolve, essentially, and telling us how much they like the story that he gets to LSU. He's battling with Miles Brennan, battling with Jaden Daniels, doesn't work out. Jaden goes on to do the things that he did. And then Nussmeier finally gets his shot. He played in the bowl game, but he's finally getting his shot this year. And he's been really good for LSU. And I think all of us can understand the appreciation of it. Hey, this guy, it almost leans into the bit of the did it the right way stuff, right? because I've heard this story, this version of the story, and nothing specific to Nussmeier. I've heard it every year for years. The guy that just stuck it out. And the public, we seem to like that. And that's fine. I'm not saying like it less. But what it tells me is that on the other side of it, there's still this negativity around the guy that doesn't stick it out, the guy that does transfer. And, last night we had two guys that probably needed a transfer. Can you imagine how heartbreaking it was to Bo Nix and his family, knowing the history that I'd probably have to go somewhere else other than Auburn? And if you're Rattler and you're the preseason Heisman favorite, in the season you get benched. And now, granted, Caleb Williams was a different beast. People that were really on it were like, man, I don't know if Rattler's even going to keep his job. And I'm thinking like, what? He's the preseason Heisman. But whatever you think of Heisman odds and Heisman voting, like he's going to lose his gig, and he did. So are they supposed to stay? Like, what if Rattler had not played, got a redshirt year, Caleb then transferred? I'd have to look at all the timeline stuff. Like, was there a possibility that Rattler could have been there another year? It's like, well, he's been here 6 years, hasn't played in 2, but he stuck it out. Love this guy. That right there is mental toughness. Like, what was Bo Nix supposed to do? I don't think the Auburn fans cared at all. I can't believe what he turned into at Oregon. And I still, I watch enough of him where I'm like, I don't know. And look, it's only halfway through his rookie year. So maybe everything we're seeing now is completely irrelevant. Because what I'd say, not just off of last night, is because I think there are some of you that love, maybe it's one can be positive without taking something away from the other one, but that's just not the way that I read it. I mean, I'm not to try to tell you like you were supposed to like Tate Martell. I remember doing the show back in the day where Tate Martell had committed, decommitted. Then he goes to Ohio State. Then he goes somewhere else. And I think he ended up at UNLV. And I just remember like old school dudes were just so frustrated. Like, who does this guy think he is? Right? And I understand, like, as you get a little bit older, you start to get turned off. Maybe it's turned off by the power that the youth has in sports now that they've never had before. But I would argue like there's stuff that's happening in college football now that if you look back to where it was 10 years ago, like say 50 years from now, you're like, do you know that they didn't pay the college guys? Like they couldn't make any money. And it's going to seem insane to people decades from now. And for a long time, people just kind of were used to it and justified it because that was the way business is done. But what you have to realize is that if you're a quarterback, especially a high profile quarterback, and you're in a tough spot on a college campus, aka losing your job, the new reality is that you got to bounce. And I'm never going to have a hard time with any quarterback saying, all right, I'm out of here. And I don't think you should either. I think you can like the Nussmeier story without feeling like the guy that transfers is somehow less than. 12 of the 32 starting quarterbacks projected at the start of the year in the NFL were transfers. Okay? The top 2 picks this year were transfers. Caleb Williams, granted, we could go case by case and try to get into specifics. Caleb Williams' coach goes to USC. He follows his coach to USC. Done and done. Ends up being the number 1 pick after winning a Heisman. Jaden Daniels was at Arizona State. And if you watch those games, I don't know that anybody thought it would be this. Hell, the first year he was at LSU, I didn't think it was going to be this now in the pros. And remember when he left Arizona State after 3 years? His teammates making a video of them trashing his locker and then one guy in the background saying he sucks anyway. Then he wins a Heisman and now looks like the most phenomenal rookie QB we've seen in years. Because when a guy doesn't transfer, what do we say? We say the same stuff, right? We'll be like, that guy's got what it takes. That's mental toughness. He's a competitor. It tells me he's a competitor because he stayed on campus and he competed. Right? These are all positive things that would be in the scouting report. But the new reality, again, is that a guy leaving probably doesn't mean anything bad. When it comes to college sports, and I've said versions of this in the past, we seem to care about kids we'll never meet way too much. Like, do you really care if a kid stays on campus to compete? You probably just like the depth of the position because a lot of us can get really selfish when it comes to college sports. We always want guys to stay because it's likely the team that we're rooting for. So as much as you may think it's great for the guy to tough it out, it's not what's happening anymore. And more and more NFL quarterbacks, like the front office is going to have to get over it. Like, oh, that guy transferred a couple times. So like, I don't care. He's sick, 6'3", he runs like crazy, and he's got all the throws. We're taking him because the advice that you may give your son, right, would be suck it up. You know, you made this decision. You gave him your word, like all good things. But if your son was a 4 or 5-star quarterback and he lost his starting job, that advice would be a lot different. The advice would likely, after calling the coaches, being like, what the fuck's wrong with you? What are you doing to my kid? Would be, we're out of here. Okay, let's do it. My old partner, Danny Kanell, joins us. We're going to talk some college ball. I think we talked this summer, so we haven't even really got in it. Yeah, we haven't even talked yet during the season. All right. Do you want to start with Texas, Georgia, or do you want to start with observations and build to the marquee event this weekend?
I'll go wherever you want to go. You know what was really cool? I did get a lot of people reach out and say they enjoyed our conversation last time. I always like getting good feedback. We did a little preview, talked about some of the issues, college football and just overall. It was fun, man. I love getting that. Let's do Georgia, Texas, man. This game, and I don't know how it lives up to last weekend in Ohio State, Oregon, which was phenomenal, but I kind of have the feeling it's going to be that type of game with two heavyweights going toe-to-toe. Both teams, yeah, they have some weaknesses, but we're nitpicking because we're talking about these programs which have probably some of the best rosters in all of college football. I think the game's going to be phenomenal. I do think people are sleeping a little bit on Georgia. That's
what it feels like. I think I am a little, because right. You're sitting there saying it's nitpicking. What are Texas's weaknesses?
So here's what I would say. It's not a weakness, but I think they're vulnerable. And where Georgia could exploit them is in their secondary. But then you have to protect Carson Beck, and Georgia's offensive line has not been great. Tate Rutledge, they're one of their best offensive linemen. I don't think he's going to play coming off the tightrope surgery. But Texas has not been tested like this. And this is where I get a little bit leery. And this is what I was worried about Ohio State, because I liked Oregon playing at home in that game because, the Michigan game, and I was there, it was awesome. And Quinn looked incredible. But then, going back on it, you're like, man, Will Johnson's a really good corner, but they're kind of struggling around him in the secondary. And then most importantly, they were playing against Davis Warren, who, was since benched, and he finishes the year with 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. So you're like, all right, the defense was great, but how much of a challenge was that? Then they play a bunch of kind of nobodies, and then they play Oklahoma, who's playing without 5 wide receivers and a backup quarterback in Michael Hawkins Jr. And it's like, yes, they were great and they held them to 3 points, but they have not seen what they're going to see in Georgia. And I know Georgia's had its issues, but I do think Carson Beck is going to go toe-to-toe with Quinn Ewers. And I think even without their they're clearly missing Brock Bowers, and they're missing Ladd McConkey, but Dom Lovett, some of their other guys, I think are capable of challenging Texas's secondary. And that's where I think Georgia can put up points on the board. I think people are sleeping on Georgia. I like Georgia with the 5 points. I think Texas wins in a close one, because I do think they're more complete, but I do think people are sleeping on Georgia somewhat.
Yeah, I think I don't know if sleeping is the right word. It's just that your expectations, in the beginning of the year, and it's just a reminder to not do it every year. We were 2 or 3 weeks in and we're like, okay, it's a clear line in the stand. It's Texas, it's Georgia, it's Ohio State. It's like, that's the tier 1. And then there's a gap for everybody else. And you're just like, okay, we're doing it again. Because it's just not really true. And then I think I look at Georgia's offense and I go, okay, what is it? Whether it's the Kentucky game, the first half against Bama, but then it's like, how much credit do I give it for the second half? But I also think when you're down that many points, it's incredible freedom for a quarterback.
Yeah.
I thought Carson Beck was so bad in that game for so long. He was rattled. He wasn't seeing things. I think his overall game could have been worse. And then you're just like, well, look, we're down multiple scores, so let's just deep shot the hell out of this. And there are probably throws you may not even take. So do I give them credit for coming back and actually taking the lead in that game? Yeah, they should. But I don't know. I guess sometimes within the construct of a game, you just have way more freedom when you have no choice. And yet when I look at, I think yards per play is just a really good thing to look at for offense and defense. And I'm sitting there wondering where Georgia's offense is. And it's a half a yard behind Texas. Texas is 10th in the country. Georgia's 21st. So it's not like Georgia's 70th. and it feels like they're being talked about that way. The Ratledge injury is a good point. But some of these schools, like, I'll just go, I'm sorry if one of your interior linemen is gone, but the way you recruit, like, there should be somebody else capable. It's like the old Jake Fisher thing with Oregon 10 years ago when the tackle went down. And it's like, yeah, but if they had, I was like, dude, if Jake Fisher is this good, then he should be getting Heisman votes. If you're telling me like the entire season's derailed here, I'll just never, Stanford Steve will be listening. This is going to start dying laughing because we, like, for 3 straight weeks, we're like, dude, Jake Fisher, this guy's a legend. And he was really good too, by the way.
And to your point, by the way,
go ahead.
Texas, what are they on their 7th running back or whatever it is? And like, they haven't missed a beat at all, like to your point. Because I'm a little bit worried about Isaiah Bond, you know, because Isaiah Bond was somewhat questionable for them at wide receiver. But then last week they bring out Ryan Wingo out of nowhere. And all of a sudden this dude looks like he could be as good as Ryan Williams or Jeremiah Smith. So yes, you are right. That's why I mentioned it, because it is a factor, but you are correct.
And he was big time.
Yeah.
Like, he was preseason All-American. I mean, he was on every single list. So there's going to be a drop-off. But go ahead. I jumped you.
No. So I totally agree to your point. You know, you made an interesting comment there, because I could not agree more. You know, and I've talked a lot about this. Like, it's my best game that I ever played was our choke at Doak when we came down 31-3. There is something incredibly freeing to being where it's so bad you're getting booed. It's like, well, what worse can happen? Like, so what if I get booed more or if I get benched? Let's just go sling it. Like, there's nothing more to lose. And I think he did have that mentality. I think Carson Beck is very streaky, which, you know, is it a mental thing? But I mean, he did not look good against Kentucky. That was shaky. But then Kentucky's defense, you know, everyone's raving about their defense, but then Vanderbilt was able to push them around and get a win. So I trust Quinn Ewers slightly more, but I do think I think Carson Beck will have a pretty solid performance. But it might, like, could be the difference in this game, is a big mistake from Carson Beck because he is streaky.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to watch Texas this year and go, I'm going to pick somebody else, but I'm with you. Like, so much of the momentum is with them, and at home, it feels like Georgia's a bit of an afterthought. But the spread will tell you, the spread is kind of a tough line. I think it's still 4.5 this morning, where you're like, man, that feels really tempting.
Yeah.
But
it was 5. It touched 5. And I think some money started coming in on Georgia. You said something there about the tiers, because this is always, it's kind of bothered me, but I think it is actually getting closer to where we can start eliminating that conversation. And just overall with parity in college football, I'm kind of curious to know what you think about this, because, at the beginning of the season, we had, these rosters look really good. And Tennessee, I think, was in a tier when they beat NC State. And it was, Ohio State. It was, Oregon was struggling. They were not in the tier. And then Bama beats Georgia, and it's like Bama, Tennessee, and Ohio State. They're in a tier all by themselves. I think anybody's beatable this year by, I won't say the bottom of the conferences, but like Power 4, middle of the road teams, I think can beat those top tier teams. That's why I do think we're going to continue to see carnage across college football. And how many teams will be undefeated at the end of the season? I don't know if we see one. If Texas gets through this one, then it looks almost inevitable, but they still have to play A&M, who's more than capable of beating them. Texas probably be a road favorite. But I feel like some of the stranglehold that the power, like the true, like top 10, top 5 programs have had on talent has been spread out somewhat because of the portal and because of NIL.
Right. And I've seen your thoughts on this, and it's not that I disagree. I would just need to see it play out more, because I feel like the playoff comparison isn't the same, where you would say, well, look how many teams are making the playoffs now. But if it were still just 4 teams, then I would need more disruption. Like, you might be right. You may be on it earlier than everybody else, but I still felt like the NIL, maybe you'd have a blip from some school that was a little kind of like when, what was it, Ole Miss. Remember when Hugh Freeze got like the number 1 player at 5 different positions, like Laquan and Tunsil, one of the safeties. And, it was kind of shitty if you're an Ole Miss fan. It's like, so we're not allowed to have awesome recruits, so now we're doing something wrong. And then I remember Hugh Freeze even was in studio with, was it you or I?
Oh, yeah.
And he was just like, this guy went to high school with this guy, and he was from the same area. And you were just like, all right, dude, whatever. Like, he he had it down. He was going to be like, this is how we got all these recruits. Again, I didn't care how they got him or didn't get him.
Right.
But I also thought it was like really funny that the Blue Bloods like Bama, Georgia, and LSU were thinking, how come your guys are getting these guys? It's like, all right, everybody relax here.
Right.
So to your point on the NIL portal thing, like Vandy's a portal story this year. They got the right kid in Diego, who's just a badass of a dude. And they're running an offense that clearly teams have not been ready for. There are teams in every conference. Like, I think Virginia Tech's good. Okay. Like BC's not the easiest out. Rutgers is better. Despite, this Wisconsin game the other day that kind of surprised me in the outcome of that one. So yeah, but I need more. I need an NC State in the ACC title game. I need somebody competing in the Final Four of whatever the 12-4 ends up being. I would just need a couple seasons of data to back up the idea that there's this massive shift as opposed to being in week 5 or 6.
So here's what I would say. We only have one undefeated SEC team, which is the earliest we've seen that happen in like 15, 20. It's been a long time. I don't know if 15, 20 years, what the exact date is, but we have only one SEC team undefeated remaining. The other thing is, I want to make sure I clarify. I don't think it changes who the national champion will be, but I think it does change who the top 12 teams are. Does that make sense? Like, that's where I think, like an SMU has a chance to make the playoffs. And we'll see what happens again. There's still parity, so they could end up losing. But like, I think they would be a team that would come out of nowhere that would kind of be like, oh my gosh, like, how did they do this? And they were one of the first ones to start the NIL program where they had the base salary. Remember the first year? And they have invested a ton in their roster where they've been able to make that leap pretty quickly. But I still, like, there's no denying that Ohio State's roster is still clearly a cut above the rest of college footballs, and Texas and Georgia and probably Oregon as well. So I do feel like depth is where those teams are still, because they have so much money and so much invested, depth doesn't become as much of an issue. But I also feel like some of the talent is spreading out. Matt Rule spoke on this a few weeks ago. He was asked about it, and he was agreeing with me. So I love what he was saying. But he said, the top teams are still going to be really good, but a lot of the depth is starting to spread out where that top tier elite talent, we're able to get a guy that maybe would have gone to, say, Ohio State or Bama or Georgia, but he was a 4 or 5 star, and he historically would have been able to make money there and just sit the bench and wait his opportunity. Now he can play right away and get money at schools that are willing to pay him because they can.
Maybe. Yeah. I guess there's cynic in me as soon as I hear a head coach talking about it. He's also telling all the people in his collectives to be like, hey, what's he going to do? Say, we still can't get him, but let us know how much money you want to donate to all this stuff. Like, look, that Tennessee program where they were going to say, like, you're going to get hit with this fee towards the collective. It's like, look, I got to live and die with you guys every Saturday all fall. I've got to pay for tickets. I got to pay for park. I got to pay for all the stuff. I got to get all the kids' hats and shirts. And now you want a C note on top of this?
Yes.
Like, are you out of your mind?
I mean, I think I mentioned this to you though. It still is, and I don't know if it ever goes away. Even when we get the revenue share and there's this $20 million, allotment that every school is going to get, I still think there will be. I think even Greg Sankey called them sweeteners. That was the name that he used. Was like, there will still be sweeteners after they get this all figured out. But we'll have to see how it plays out. Because you're right, you are right, but I do think you're starting to see it kind of flush through the entire system, and there's better players across the board. Like even below in the SEC, like Arkansas is only they're a 2.5 point dog against LSU. I guess historically, maybe.
Well, Arkansas should have a better record. They should.
Yeah, they should.
I mean,
they beat Oklahoma
State.
They blew the 3 touchdown lead there, and they absolutely should.
They lose their quarterback in the Tennessee game, and it still didn't matter. I
know what I was going to tell you.
Are you arguing the SEC is deeper than ever?
I'm not. I'm saying they're more average than ever. Do you remember?
No, because I know that's what I'm always a little fearful with some of your like long form positions. We'll be like, is he actually just trying to say this? But you know what? Let's take that topic off for one episode. See if we can do it.
You brought it up. I didn't even bring it up.
I did. Well, you sort of indirectly brought it up with every tweet ever.
We just need some of that funneled down to the ACC and Big 12.
Let me stay in Ohio State here, because I thought, look, I picked Oregon as a national champ, honestly, because I think I was trying to be different. I'll do it every now and then where I'll be like, I don't want to pick a chalk team. Let me go with Oregon. I thought they would split the regular season because I thought there was a clear gap between the talent there. When Birch was out at home this past weekend, I thought that was a huge blow for them physically. But physically, I saw no difference between Ohio State and Oregon. If there was a chance, if there was a thought of like some of the Oregon stuff we'd seen early in the year, which felt like they had corrected, would that come back against a much tougher opponent in Ohio State? I thought they would split them, but I thought they'd split them the other way around. So who knows? It could still very well happen. Penn State, I feel better about them than I've ever felt about them in 2 years after Aller's game against USC. So I'm going to ask you about that in the Big Ten conversation here. But was there anything from Ohio State, Oregon, where you went, okay, this now gives me a clearer picture of who these teams are? On it, like it was weird. I had teams that lost last weekend. That's the best I felt about Will Howard in a really long time. I thought he was cooking, and I know the last possession sucked and there was all sorts of mistakes, but that was like a different level from him, man, in that kind of game. So if I were a Buckeyes fan, as disappointed as I am in the loss, I thought that Howard kind of like, that put some of my concerns of what his ceiling was at bet.
You know what I thought the difference in that game was? Coaching. Okay. and not just the 12th man on the field, which was genius, and I love Dan Lanning there. But how about the onside kick, which kind of gets overlooked when he does something that we really haven't seen before, where he tells the kicker to drill the dude up front, and it actually worked. And it was actually genius because it was relatively low risk, because if he misses him, like typically when you do the old school onside kick, it dribbles, and if they recover, they get it right there at incredible field position. So there's a huge risk if you end up not getting it, if you don't recover it. But on the squib kick, when you try, or when you do that one, where you put like a line drive bullet at him, if the kicker misses the guy he's aiming at, it just squibs and goes back, and probably goes back, and you can get him on the 25. It's not devastating if you lose it. So I thought it was genius from Dan Lanning. And I did think, and even again, the 12 man on the field, which I do think he planned, and it was coming out of a timeout. He alluded to it. I thought that was the difference in a game where in these tight games, I think this weekend it'll matter against Georgia, Texas, when you have these uber talented teams that are going against each other. I think coaching has been amplified more than ever before. But I totally agree with you on Will Howard. I picked Oregon to win the game. And the morning of the game when Jordan Birch was ruled out, I was like, oh, crap. Like, I might look bad on this one. And then they had Mateo Uyunglele, my guy DJ's little brother, goes out there, and they hardly even miss a beat. He was in the backfield all night making plays for Oregon's defense. That was probably the most surprising and I would say concerning / disappointing thing, if you're a Buckeye fan, was their inability to kind of really dominate Oregon's defensive line. I thought that was pretty concerning. And it's just what we had seen all year, what we had heard about with JTT and Jack Sawyer was this defense was otherworldly. And then you go out there and Dylan Gabriel just chops him up. And, he was pretty relatively unscathed all night, made some huge plays. But I like you, that was my big question mark, was Will Howard for the Buckeyes around all this superstar talent. And I thought maybe he's had the best game I've seen him play.
Yeah, I think you're right on, though, with everything there. And, there's things that I really like if you're watching a game or watching a certain team like more than ever. And obviously I watch LSU a lot, but like you'll see, hey, sometimes the coaching does help here. Like the linebackers for LSU, even with Perkins being out, like you're starting to see some things here from this group, like guys standing out a little bit. I think Oregon's linebackers in that game were awesome. Mm-hmm. And I was with you when Birch was out. I'm like, okay, this guy's a stud. Like, is there going to be a little reminder of this kind of Midwest thing? Is it going to? And then I started thinking about, like, remember when Lou Holtz and the Ryan Day stuff from last year and how pissed he got? Like, I know nobody likes Lou Holtz anymore, but he wasn't necessarily wrong about Ohio State. Like, you always feel like they're going to win the physical matchup against almost anybody they go up against. And then you start looking at like certain play calling situations, and I was like, oh man, like they may not like it on 4th and short or 3rd and short. Like they may actually kind of know. And then that's your answer about whether they're going to get the push that they always expect to get. So, I'm not going to look at Ohio State completely differently here. Lanning, I thought it was really important for him after the Georgia loss a couple years ago, both Washington losses, because I think that conversation would have just been I already know what it was going to be. It would be stupid, but it would be there. It would exist. We've done enough on that game. Give me your Aller thoughts, because I thought he was awesome in that USC game.
I did too. Tyler Warren wasn't bad either. That dude goes over
How about
200
him,
yards
huh?
as a tight end.
Mechanicsville.
So there was a stat going into Penn State into that game where Drew Aller had 556 attempts and 3 interceptions, which is great, right? It sounds awesome. But to me, it's also a little bit concerning because you're like, what does that mean? Is he a little bit too conservative? And last year, he was incredible with his touchdown to interception ratio. This year, he was incredible with his touchdown interception ratio coming into this game. But like, they brought in Andy Koltnicki from Kansas to get this big play offense. Like, it was supposed to be explosive. And it just felt like a continuation of what we had seen from last year coming into this year. And that, where was this explosive firepower? And it just wasn't there. So I was actually worried about it, saying, where is this? And then all of a sudden, like, he comes out there, and I was actually encouraged that he made some mistakes, because sometimes you get a little bit too cautious and you're trying to make the perfect read, and you become a little bit of a check down Charlie. Like, you get a little bit too conservative because you don't want to make the mistake. Coaches tell you all the time, hey, don't turn the ball over. Let's be smart with the football. And that can be a detriment sometimes. So I actually thought Aller had a little bit of that going on. Like, just cut him loose. And I know the interceptions weren't great, but I was actually encouraged. Like, it's okay. Like, go ahead and let it loose. And I thought the play for me, which might have changed my view and a lot of people's view of him, was the 4th and 10 conversion, where he had to scramble a little bit to his left, hits it, and it's like crunch time. They got to score to keep the game going. And so I look with a lot more optimism at Drew Aller. I thought he stepped up in a huge way. He's been compared to Josh Allen because of his body type, and he is a massive dude. I was in Columbus last year for the Penn State-Ohio State game, and he walked right by me. I was like, this kid is massive. Like, I get the hype around him, and he can run a little bit, but he's not like a deer. Like, no one's going to confuse him with Lamar Jackson. But like, he's got some skills that if he can build off the confidence that he got in that game on the road, I think Penn State could be one of those teams that is capable of beating Ohio State at home in a few weeks. I think he could have that type of impact. So I love his trajectory of where he's headed. And a lot of it is based on what I think could be a breakout game for him against USC.
Yeah, that's how it felt like, whatever it is. And listeners have heard me say this before. I don't know if I've said it to you, but like, his touchdown interception thing last year actually to me was alarming. Like, it meant, I know that's probably hard to like think, like, what do you want? More picks? Oh, you like him because yeah. But the problem was, if you watched him all season long last year, he just wouldn't even like go for any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the whole point of having some big 5-star recruits, like, you can make some tough plays. We can get a receiver separation and lack of talent, all that kind of stuff. But like, they're just doing, they look different on offense. And Tyler Warren, man, what a stud. All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to your 2 favorite teams. Who's better, Clemson or Miami?
So I think it's Clemson. And I like Miami. I liked them coming into the season. After Georgia, I was like, oh man, Clemson's rough, like everybody did. I'm starting to believe that Dabo and Cade Klubnik might have the last laugh on everyone who was dunking on them after the Georgia game. I mean, do you remember there were so many people in our business, writers, that were just having a field day with Dabo's. What's that?
Yeah, bloggers.
Yeah, those bloggers that were just dunking all over him. Like, see, you have to adapt. And I still maintain that Dabo has to approach the portal to address needs. But I do think this team is playing as good as anybody. I think they are the best team in the ACC. Miami has been flirting with disaster a little bit too closely. I think they're in a tricky spot this weekend against Louisville. I love Cam Ward. He is ultra dynamic and he is an absolute playmaker, but he has it in him that he's just a little bit too much of a gunslinger. Like, he's got to dial it back. The throw he made against Cal where he's scrambling and throws it back against the field and it's a pick six. You're like, how can that happen to a guy that's played as much football as he has? And yet he just does that. It's in his nature, because a lot of times he did it against Florida in the first quarter. And then he bounced back and like blows him out in Gainesville. But he just has those in him where the better the competition is against him, I worry that that could burn them. And I think when he plays Clemson, I think he could have his hands full. By the way, I do think Cade Klubnik, and this is, I mean, everybody's seen this now, but he's playing with his numbers, if you can eliminate the Georgia game, he's statistically as good as anybody in the country. But you can't take away that Georgia, second half. He looked like a deer in the headlights, but I do think he's gained more and more confidence. Bryant Wesco has been playing more, the freshman wide receiver. They're like figuring things out, especially along the offensive line. I think Matt Luke, the offensive line coach, was a hire that kind of flew below. It didn't fly below the radar because that guy's coached in the SEC. He was a head coach, but he has done a really, really good job with Clemson's offensive line, which has been their biggest issue going against Georgia, Ohio State, Bama, and all of a sudden they look like one of the strengths of the team. So I think Clemson's the best team in the ACC.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's probably just the flirtations the last couple of weeks from Miami. And you're right. Like Klubnik was a big time guy coming out. People were saying like DJ's going to transfer because of this dude. And that's exactly what happened. And, when you looked at the receivers, I felt like at least in an NC State game, it's like, hey, these guys look like playmakers. Like I know Maffa's been there a long time, but he's already off to a best start of any season of his career. What do you got for me on Iowa State? Because I like to be fair and include him into the conversation. I did kind of like a statistical profile breakdown of Beck, the quarterback. Anthony Beck's kid's good. Like he's pretty good. They haven't asked a ton of him. I thought the response against West Virginia in that spot, Morgantown going off 7-0 right down the field. And they just seem to, we've seen this from Matt Campbell in the past too, like just a mental toughness, take care of the football. We're not going to wow you, but it's just, it's hard to imagine anybody's going to stay clean through the Big 12.
Do you want like my snarky response?
Of course we do.
The one that could get me in trouble if they like saw this. It's like a cute story, right? They're just like the little team that like plays really hard and they play really good defense. That's being very sarcastic though. They are a good story. And I am friends with Anthony Beck and his son is a really good quarterback. The thing about the Big 12, which has been completely flipped upside down, I think Kansas State is the best team in the conference. I think they'll end up winning it. But Iowa State, that Matt Campbell is an outstanding coach, as you know. They've gotten through some of their tougher opponents yet. The schedule sets up nicely. Utah, who I thought this is wild. I thought Utah was the biggest lock to win the conference of any of the Power Four conferences. I was like, that's the biggest gap in all of them. And then, of course, Cam Rising gets hurt. He comes back, plays awful. He's done. They look like they might be 8-4, completely out of the race. So that kind of flipped things a little bit. So, I think Iowa State versus Kansas State, last game of the season, might be even one of those rematch scenarios where you see them play again for the Big 12 championship game. I just don't know if Iowa State has the elite talent that they need. I think they could win the Big 12, but I think Kansas State has a better team to compete in the playoff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the Utah thing throws everything off. And the Rising part of it, like you knew it was going to be bad if it was a hand injury and he missed that much time. And then he comes back and he doesn't even look anything like him. And by the way, I am rooting hard for the Alan Bowman Award extra year for Cam Rising, where they said they were going to petition to maybe be able to have him redshirt this year and then play again. Or I don't think even
Utah wants him back though.
Yeah, that's kind of what it sounded like with Whittingham's. Like we hadn't really. I'm glad you said that because I know there was a Whittingham quote in there. I was like, we haven't really talked to him about whatever that is, or I don't care. Keep balling. Like for guys that aren't going to be good enough.
And so here's what I think is really interesting about this. I mean, what's Cam Ryan? And I don't know. Maybe he's got a hedge fund job lined up. Maybe he's got a sales gig somewhere. Maybe he wants to go to medical school. But I don't know if anywhere
he wants to go outward bound and work with
exactly.
Kids,
but I don't know if he's going to make as much money as he can playing quarterback somewhere else or at Utah. I mean, the going rate for a guy like Cam Rising, even with the injuries, is probably minimum $500,000, $500,000. And it might not be a school. Like, I don't think he's going to be a top portal target because of the injury history. And that's why I think Kyle Whittingham and Utah might just want to move on. Like, we've given this guy a lot of time, but the injuries have just really had our hands tied behind our back. And it's been this issue that's plagued them for 2 seasons now. I think they want to move forward and like thinking about the future and not have a guy who's been littered with injuries. But and 5 years ago, a player like this would have been like, yeah, you know what? I'm done. Like my body can't take it. But why not run it back one more time and make some more money? Because he's banked a lot and good for him for being able to do so.
And by the way, anybody that, the Kansas State, I'm still hanging on. because that BYU score, like go through the game.
Avery Johnson had his worst game. It was kind of fluky. There was a bunch of balls on the ground. I said, and I am pounding the table, but BYU reminds me of Iowa when we got into it so many times. As long as they keep winning, I don't think they do, but as long as they do, their resume is as good as anybody's in the country. They've beaten two current top 25 teams. I love the story of Jake Retzlaff, the BY Jew, but I think it comes to an end. So I like Kansas State. And I love the way Avery Johnson bounced back. That was his worst game at BYU. Comes back against Oklahoma State, balls out. He's balled out since then. He's a young talent, man. He's really good.
It was a weird game. They were -3 in turnovers. BYU was clean, and then they didn't convert 1 4th down. So when you go through the log of it all, I don't know about the BYU best resume thing, but let's table that. That's ridiculous.
Anybody else beating top 25 teams? 2 current, not preseason. I always love to do the preseason thing. Beat SMU and beat Kansas State. 2 top 25 teams.
Wow.
Nobody else, not one other team has done that. Not one other team has done that.
Yeah, but I know what you're doing.
Texas,
like the top
25.
Okay, cool. I guess they're as good as they are. Awesome.
I'm just saying the resume. They should be ranked they should be ranked ahead of LSU. Give me that.
All right. Last one. Look, I think I had him in 12. I had him 12 2 weeks ago. So I was ahead of it a little bit. But yeah. All right. Last thing. Explain this tweet with Danny Kanell. We need to be honest about Bama instead of trying to sugarcoat this game and talk about them getting to the playoffs. They just got pushed around at home. They have issues at QB. They're not disciplined. Their days of dominating are over.
That was a year ago, right?
Oh, I read the wrong one.
That was a while ago, right?
That was last year.
I do think we've seen a continuation of that into this season. Like Kalen DeBoer and Kane Womack, they're getting all the heat. I don't think the cupboard was as full as people would think. I do think this is one of the reasons Saban retired. Like, I think he realized the roster was not as dominant as it once was.
All right. Do you think they are still in play to be a playoff team?
I think they get beat at Tennessee this weekend.
Okay. All right.
But they could win out. They could win out. Their defense is not even top 10 in the SEC. Like, Arkansas's defense is better. Oklahoma's defense is better. Tennessee's defense is better. And that's not even counting Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss. Like, there's South Carolina. There are other defenses which are that's the thing that's sort of glaring.
Well, I take South Carolina's defense over a ton of teams in the SEC.
Yeah, that's what. But I'm saying, like, Alabama has the 10th best or worst. Kentucky's defense is better. Like, you go down their defense has issues. They don't have a Will Anderson Jr. or a dude on the defensive line that scares you the way they've had historically. That's why I
thought they had figured some stuff out. I thought they had figured some stuff out after the Wisconsin game, because the USF rematch, I was like, what is up with this group? And then, you look at their linebackers. Still, some people still think they have the best group of linebackers back there, and it was just the turnover at secondary. And there isn't really the edge guy I thought it was going to be the freshman but he's gotten banged up. All right. So you had one other thing, though. I know I'm going to let you go here in a second. Was there something that you said about Kalen DeBoer where it turned into something again for you?
No, I don't think so. I've defended him.
Okay.
But you know what is jarring, and this is what I understand, because for 17 years you had one culture, one voice, one, voice that came out of there. It was Nick Saban. And you could not have picked a different style of coach. He's an offensive coach. He has no ties to the SEC, and I know Saban didn't either, but he's completely the opposite. He's laid back. And even their players are like, he's laid back. He keeps his composure. That's what keeps us poised. I think that's why they lost against Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt's a good team. Like, Diego Pavia sliced and diced them. That was incredible. But that was probably the most impressive thing I thought with Saban, was he never had that letdown game. Never had we came in a little bit. We weren't really prepared. And that's because he was so obsessive and so hard and disciplined on his players. And the one thing that was really shocking to me was at halftime, they interviewed DeBoer, and it's like they had an awful series. Jalen Milroe throws an interception on 3rd and 18, which shouldn't have been called. They should have just ran the ball. But like, they give up the field goal. Saban would have been livid. And Kalen DeBoer's like, well, we got some things to figure out. We'll get in there. We'll be fine. Like, as calm as you could be, which I would prefer to play for, but it is jarring to see it. And I do think that there will be some kind of growing pains and there's a learning curve there of learning how to balance a cool, calm, poised coach with what you used to have and being prepared weekly. It's just, you can see some of that taking place. And of course, Bama fans are like, we want Saban back. We want that mentality. I don't think you have to have it, but I think you're seeing some of those learning pains like on full display right now.
Is this the Iamaleava week then? Is it happening? Because I've been waiting, man.
Well, we weren't. I mean, did you? I don't know if you saw my reply because you were like, "When's the signature game?" And I'm like, "Didn't you miss Chattanooga because he was awesome against them."
I didn't see it.
He has not been good. I don't think. You know, it's funny because Jackson Arnold was a similarly hyped quarterback, and he gets benched.
You're muted.
At Oklahoma. What's that?
I'm just kidding. You're muted. I'm just.
No, I'm not. I think Nico. I think he could have a get right game this weekend. I think Bama's secondary has issues, and their offensive line hasn't been good. But again, this goes to Bama's defense. I think they'll be able to protect him a little bit better than they have. And if they do, I think he'll be able to put up some points. So again, he's young. We got to stop like christening these guys and thinking they're going to be Heismans as a freshman just because we've seen other guys do it. Nico's still really good. He's struggled somewhat, but it's normal.
Where can all the Kanelliacs catch up with you?
At Danny Kanell on X, the easiest place. Sirius XM, Dusty and Danny in the morning. I'm on a new show. By the way, I don't know if you know this. There is a juggernaut that is ready to take down College Game Day and Big Noon. Both of them. We're going for both of them. College football pregame show on CBS Sports HQ. Damian Harris is phenomenal. The Alabama running back.
Yeah.
He's awesome. He's really talented. He's really good. We have Cardell Jones, Darius Butler, Beanie Wells. We have a really good time. It's a good show.
Beanie Wells in the mix. I love it.
Check it out.
All right. Always great to catch up, man. Talk to you soon.
You too.
Fired up. Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman, Dudes on Dudes, the new podcast. It's out now, out Thursdays during the NFL season. How did this start?
I think it started with Rob just coming on Games with Names, and we enjoyed doing it so much. And we started talking about certain guys that we were highlighting in the Games with Names pod. And we're like, we should just join up and make a podcast of us talking about guys that we marvel at.
That is basically how it happened. I mean, I went on Games with Names about 4 times, and Julian and we had some great chemistry doing it as well. And I really enjoyed just showing up to Julian's house and just podcasting with him. The setup that he had, the team that he has around him as well. They were very sufficient, very organized, and I appreciated that. And we just came about then, hey, we got chemistry. His team talked about it. Hey, you guys should start a podcast. We're always BSing around, too, watching games. I'm always at Julian's house on Saturday watching college football games. Sunday night football, after I'm done with Fox, I go to his house. We watch the Sunday night game. And we're always breaking down players, evaluating them, talking about what type of game that they have. So this just came about just going to his house in L.A. every week while I was there for Fox already. So it's a really cool concept as well.
It's fun. You know, it's kind of what you did in the locker room. And it's been so fun to work with Rob again. We've kind of set up this we've taken the template of how it was in New England and then like relaxed it with our operations of how we do our work. So like we have our red schedule, like in New England, when you go out, you get a red schedule every day. We have like our red schedule printout we have the people doing that. And, you know, just kind of, it was fun to get to have the workplace environment with Rob. I mean, we worked together for 10 years, like every day, like where you see each other at the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. And then you have to go out and you have to perform and do something. I honestly just missed working with Rob, and then we found this, and it's been fun.
I saw the Randy Moss clip and I loved it. I loved the idea of Randy Moss in the locker room because I think like Mike Vick always had that with guys when he would show up to a team. Like I was talking to Willie Colon about it, and you're like, "Oh my God, we got Mike Vick!" Like these superheroes that you saw when you were younger, and now he's your teammate. Was there anyone else for you, Rob, that you were in awe of when you started? Like it was hard. You were weird about it in the beginning.
Well, this guy is probably not talked about a lot, and he actually was a former teammate of Mike Vick, because you just brought up Mike Vick as well, and it was Algie Crumpler. I mean, just the way that guy could handle a blocking scheme, just the way that he could just take a defensive end and just move him was incredible, and just the knowledge of the game that he had as well was just spectacular. And I know Algie Crumpler and Julian used to go to the cigar bar back in the day too and smoke a cigar together, which was the most outrageous thing I heard when you told me about that, Julian.
I was 22 years old, and we used to go to the Cigar Master in Providence, Rhode Island. Algie used to go there every Monday night to smoke a cigar. I didn't smoke cigars at all, but I just wanted to hang out with Algie Crumpler because I remember throwing to him in Madden back in that like 2000 Madden with Vic and Algie, where they throw the post and you have the Inco with Algie Crumpler. And I was such a fan of him too. Rob was, we were teammates, and he goes, "Yeah, I go to the Cigar Masters. You want to come?" I'm like, "Sure, definitely." Took down like 2 cigars, almost coughed up a lung, but got to hang out and watch ball with freaking Algie Crumpler. It was so fun.
I don't know if you know this, Gronk, and I didn't tell Jules this either, but the Aaron Hernandez TV show, I read for the part of Rob Gronkowski because when I moved out to LA, I wanted to try to expand my base of abilities. And so I read for the part of Gronk, and they were like, hold on. I was like, no, I have it. I was like, I understand him better than most actors would. And they were like, you're too old and you're bald. And I was like, a wig, and we can put a little dye in there. I was like, you're just going to get some young guy and he's not going to get it right. And then they were like, no. And so they said, maybe if Tom Tupa comes to visit the facility, you could be Tom Tupa or something. Have you seen the guy playing Gronk yet? Because I think I would have nailed it.
Well, I think, Russillo, you would have nailed it as well. But like they said, you're just maybe a tad bit older than me, but you do look young still. I'm not going to lie. You really do.
Thank you.
You just need some hair, and a wig would have did you justify you playing the role as well. But Laith Walchberger or Walchchild, he's a good friend of mine. I've never been able to say his last name. I actually never called him by his last name before. But Laith is his name. He's been a good friend of mine for quite some time, and so he knows me personally, and that's why he was able to nail the laugh down to a science, and then be able to over exaggerate playing me as well, which was perfect for the show, because the show kind of is, I would say, more of like how do you describe the show? I mean, more of like a Hallmarky type show, if that's the way I'm going with it. Yeah. Right? What you say that?
That's what you're trying to say. You're just trying to say terrible.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's so funny. He got to be bigger, though. The fun thing about Gronk, when he walked into the locker room and he acted the way Rob acted, it was almost funny because it was coming from like a 7'2" giant. Yeah. That's like the biggest, funniest part about it, is where you'd see this big ass dude with like 3-inch abs of a 6-pack, and like he'd come in like Goofy, 3-inch abs each.
Are they still there, Gronk?
That's the only thing that you get into these movies, just like the Hulu one with Tommy and Pam, where Tommy Lee is supposed to be tall, long. Like it just doesn't work for me. There's only one Gronk, and then Hernandez. I don't know. They can't. Why you would think that they wouldn't do combine stuff. Like, have you seen those scenes?
Routes. Yeah, I mean, look. You know how hard it is to find an actor who also is going to be able to run crisp routes.
Well, can we get a stuntman? Can we get a stuntman?
They should have had stuntmen. You're right on that.
We need to study that.
Did you see your explosiveness in your play today? That's all over the place, Julian. There's a clip now of Julian going viral, and he literally catches it. He looks like a 80-year-old man coming out of a wheelchair with his explosiveness, and gained like a half yard before he got tackled. And then he hurt Hernandez's ankle in that play as well. So good job, Julian. Good job. Wow. I didn't know you were that slow. Wow.
So slot routes,
you had a great career for how slow you were, buddy.
That's Hollywood for you, you know.
I thought Belichick was good when they draft him. It was incredible. He's like, dude, tight ends. Never done that before. I was dying. I was dying at the Belichick. They had the face down, the sweatshirt. It just must be hilarious for you guys. I mean, I know it's a serious topic and everything, but we're not going to go there. It must be ridiculous for you guys watching the clips of this.
Hey, Rob, can you see Coach Belichick doing air guitar and air drums to Bon Jovi while drafting you and Aaron?
I mean, he should have been for sure, because that was a great pick by him by taking me in the second round. It definitely deserves some air drums right there. But no, I can't see him doing that at all. I can see him drafting, and they hit it right on a little bit, you know, two tight ends or whatever he was saying, and I can see him just sitting back in the chair like these mother effers. They better work out. They better get the job done. I can't see him doing the guitar part, though.
All right, give me some other, because we used to do this, like, guys are like, if you could trade with anybody, who would you trade with? And you were like, Ryan Gosling would be really high. He would be really high if we were doing dudes on dudes content here. If there is anyone athletically for you, Jules, you had a great career. So like maybe you'll just pick, you know, a Jerry Rice type, but I don't know. I don't want to take your answer away from you.
Any guy that I would like to pick that I wouldn't want to be anyone else. I like my career, but there's some guys that like, I mean, that's a tough one. I would say who would I pick?
Don Beebe?
Huh?
Don Beebe?
Nah, not a Don Beebe. Maybe a Largent back in the day, become a governor or something.
There you go. His poster was sick. I remember I had that. I didn't even really know that much about him. It was just like, how's this guy this good?
I mean, the guy could run go routes, and he was like 5'8", and he could play on the outside. And I just remember, I haven't watched like crazy amounts of film on him, but anytime a guy our size goes aerial on sidelines, it doesn't matter what era it is, and comes down with balls. It seemed like he did that a lot. And then the kind of guy he is off the field, I would love to be, just a stand-up human being.
Wow, that was like a great answer. It was both on and off the field.
I know who I would work out with.
Okay.
He just recently retired, actually. Aaron Donald, man. He's an absolute savage and beast. And if you ever seen his workouts, he's like combating versus knives. Like someone's trying to stab him, and he's got to go around him and, you know, work on his hand placement. And that's kind of what made him a great defensive player. But overall, that guy's strength and speed and explosiveness for his size, that's someone who I would want to train with.
If you could dodge knives, you could dodge blockers.
Exactly. There we go.
You can dodge knives, you can dodge blockers.
There we go. That's our new quota now for dudes on dudes, Julian.
T-shirt. That should be the first T-shirt. He's shocking in that the first time I ever stood next to him, you're like, I can't believe this is the most dominant player in the league on that side of the ball. And like during his prime, it was just stupid. Like I used to never watch defensive tackles. You know, as somebody who didn't play, I probably get stuck watching the ball a little bit too much. And then there'd just be games of the Rams that were like, just watch him. 3 guys wrecking everything.
Did you think he was small or what?
I think just because of what I'd seen on TV, I thought he was going to be massive. And it's not that he's small, but everything about him is a muscle. Like everything is muscle, and it's not just weight room strength. You can just tell, like, you know, there's different. It's always crazy to me to think at the level that you guys played at, that there'll always be a couple guys that make everybody else feel weak, right? 1,000+ NFL players. And there's a couple guys running around on Sundays that everybody's like, that guy makes me feel like a little kid. like the Larry Allen stuff back in the day with the Cowboys that aren't, that Donald was that dude for as long as he was.
No, I'm not putting in the same category, but we just talked about him on one of our Dudes on Dudes episodes. James Harrison was kind of like that, where he's not like a huge guy, but you can see how wide he is. And like when you see like veins in his like calves and stuff, you're like, oh my God, this guy's a real wrecker.
I feel like what makes them such great defensive players as well is because they already have that leverage built in, and the game of football is all about leverage. So they're shorter and they can just burst right off the ball, and your body kind of functions better. It kind of, it's like a machine, and the machinery works in peace with each other when you're shorter as well. I'm a tall guy. I mean, there's a lot more mass and a lot more movement that has to be made in order for me to get going. When you're shorter, it's more of like a bam, bang, bang type movement, and therefore you can have better explosiveness and be able to get around a defender better because there's not much, as much body part and mass that you got to move when you're taller. So it's kind of an advantage for those guys, being a little bit shorter than being so stocky. You can just get under a defender and, and move them.
Shorter drive train.
There we go. There we go.
That's what we're looking for.
That's what we're looking for.
There you go, Jules. That's why we're podcasters together.
So
Julian, finish it for me. Thank you, Jules. That's why we're together in business now.
Sometimes the drivetrain on those things are they're so big that they're powerful, but there's a lot of chance for fault in there.
All right. I was wondering this because I always felt like as an astute watcher of number 12 back there for 20 years because I was living in Boston the first half of his career. And so it was just, I grew up a Pats fan and, I could always kind of tell, like I could tell it was like this crazy thing of watching on TV, the way he would step into a throw and it's like, okay, he has it. Like he has it. Where you're watching other guys on Sunday and they just release it. And you're like, I wonder where this is going to go. You could tell with certain ways he stepped into throws where it's like he has exactly what he wants. But the other thing I would notice is if there were receivers that maybe he didn't trust, he would throw the ball a certain way, like maybe lower in the end zone because he was afraid of it being tipped up in a pick. And then there'd be guys you could just tell, like, if there was a go route and he didn't make the play, then he was never going to get that ball thrown to him the rest of the game. Gronk's laughing right now with a huge smile on his face because he knows, both of you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm curious about like the dynamic of the receiver because I think some receivers are like out of their minds. You both come in about the same time, like Jules just a year after Gronk, and it's still Brady prime, his run goes forever. Were there ever times where a new receiver would come back to the huddle and maybe say something to Tom, where you two would look at each other being like, that's not really how we operate here?
No shot.
Never happened.
I don't really, I don't remember that at all. Everyone, when you stepped in the huddle, like if it was a new player from another team, they were just like, oh my God, this is how teams practice. This is how you guys do things. If it was a young football player, in our generation, we'd all been watching Tom since we were kids, like in 8th grade, 7th grade, and then you get to go on the field with them. No one's saying anything to them. So there really wasn't any of that, like, give me the ball in the huddle. What do you think, Rob?
No, there's no one out there saying, give me the ball in the huddle. But I understand what you're saying. You wouldn't get in the huddle from the beginning if he didn't trust you. And the way to gain his trust was just even throwing and running the right route and just 7-on-7 and pat and go. He was always making sure that you were already doing the right thing right from the get-go. And he could just tell because Tom knows talent. He can tell, who has talent. He can tell who can get the job done in literally the first couple minutes that he's on the field with them. So you're not even going to be in that huddle arranged in it if he doesn't even trust in you from the beginning. In order to get his trust, you got to show that you can go out there, compete. You got to go out there, be able to make plays, get open, and kind of do things the way that he wants them to get done as well, which were always the right way as well. He was basically another coach out there.
Yeah, you had to do it in practice. Like, if you didn't do it in practice,
it's almost like a tryout. It was almost like a tryout for Sunday.
Every practice in New England was like a tryout. It didn't matter who you were. Like, yes, the more plays that you made, you'd have some room for error. But like when people talk about how did you gain Tom's trust, it was never about just gaining it. It was continually earning it every day, like at work. Even when it was like a blitz period or a 9-on-7 period for the offensive line, he'd take a lot of the receivers during that period and we'd go run on, plays and routes on script, and he'd have his coaching points on it, and he'd test you during that to see if you knew or you could take it. I mean, I remember when Rob and I would go run routes in the off season with them, and we would do like a 2-minute drill, like style route. We do sets of 10 and we go up the field, and everything would be verbal communication where he'd be saying like, all right, it's Army. Right, Army. So that would change the personnel group, put me at a different position, and put Rob at another position. And like he'd call out the play, and then like in the middle of his drop, he'd be like, "Will weak safety," meaning like there's a blitz, so you have a side adjustment. He'd test guys so much, like in the prep, just to get that confidence in a guy. That, like Rob said, if he's not in the huddle, like if you were in the huddle, you had to earn to be in that huddle.
And also, there's one thing that Tom can read better than anyone else out there in the game of football. And I would say this has not been talked about ever, but I just thought about it, is that he can read someone's body language better than anyone else out there. Like, he knew when to throw me the ball. He knew when I was up and ready to go, when I was fully activated. He could tell when Julian was being like a little beat down or rugged down, and he wasn't going to get open that play and won't even look his way then, and would find the guy that's all sprunk and ready to go coming out of the huddle. He could read someone that well. And Julian, I feel like you would agree with me on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it goes into that prep. Like, he knew when I would drop my weight, how I dropped my weight, how I would break. And that came through the constant reps in practice. And also matchups. I would 100% agree with that, with Rob, that Tom knew your body language, because the one thing he would always tell a young receiver. What is it, Rob? Route running.
Be decisive.
Be decisive. You just have to be decisive. If it's a zone, sit and tell me it's a zone. You're my eyes on the field, so don't be fluttering up the field if it's a zone play. Sit and be in the zone. Be decisive. It's man, put your foot in the ground and run away from the guy. He was always so about decisiveness. I used to get so mad about it.
Hey, Russillo, are you getting a little hard thinking about all this football talk with Brady?
It moved a little. Look, man, I could talk about this stuff. I could talk about this stuff all day because sometimes I even feel guilty. I have you guys on. It's like, oh, tell me another Tom story. Tell me another Bill story. But you're part of this run where I don't even know if you can appreciate it as much as you do now while you're in it. You're young guys. You're like, this is how it works. And then you become friends with all these other players and you get to know all these other dudes. And you're just like, that's what you guys did. That's not what we did. And there's a reason for the sustained success. And so, maybe some of the audience is like, oh, you guys are telling Pat stories again. I can't get enough of it because I'm constantly fascinated about the process and the approach in leading these results. I mean, I don't know that you guys just sit around on the couch on Saturday and it's an awkward silence. And then Jules turns to Gronk and goes, hey, you know what? We're awesome. And then it's just, it's silence again. You just start laughing. But do you have moments as you've gotten older of going, holy shit, we did that. We were part of that.
I think, yeah, with the success that the Chiefs are having, it's a reminder of how hard it is.
Yeah, that's great.
You see them and their success. You sit there, you're like, man, this is a damn good football team. That's probably what they thought of us. Because you didn't really get to enjoy it during the time because, you go win a Super Bowl and you had to reinvent yourself that offseason. You had to work 10 times harder to get back to the next one. And watching the Chiefs go out and play and reinvent their team each year and see the struggles not the struggles, but the learning of their team in the early part of the season. And then you can see him sharpening that familiarity reminds me that, man, it was pretty damn hard and pretty amazing. Or when you watch an old film, or you go on NFL Network and like the 28-3 or the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl's on, like these comebacks in the fourth quarter, like you're like, damn, how did we win those games? It was pretty freaking cool. Like that, you start to see that more the further you get you're out the door.
I appreciate it. Here's a little story. I was at my brother's house in Dallas a couple weeks ago. He's got 4 kids, and the youngest is like 8 years old, and he YouTubed me. He's starting to figure it out. Like, I played in the NFL. I was a little bit big time. You know, his uncle was.
He must wonder, like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
He's like,
So
okay, this makes sense.
So he put the AFC Championship game on from 2018 when we played in Kansas City and beat them. And we watched the final 8 minutes of the game, and I never appreciated that game as much as I did when I was just sitting there watching it with my nephew on the couch 3 weeks ago. And it made me understand how great we were. I mean, Julian, we had 4 3rd and 10s and a 4th down, and you had 3 across the middle, and Tom put it on you perfectly. And the guy was basically covering you, and he fit it right in that little tiny hole. And you making those catches on those 3rd downs made me appreciate you that much more. I mean, during the time I'm running a route, I really don't get to see what you're doing. You know, I don't really get to see that you make that catch with the guy basically on your back, and then, run through 2 tackles and get the 1st down, which was just incredible, because we're on to the next play. And then after the game, we're on to the next game. So just to watch that game made me truly understand what type of a success that we had and how awesome we were. And I had a couple 3rd and 10s as well that I got a 1st down on, which was really cool too. It made my nephew proud, and I was proud that he was watching.
So funny though. So I think a few months ago, Rob's been coming to the house a lot, and it's part of working. And my daughter, Lily, she sees Rob, and I go, hey, Lily, you remember Rob? Because they haven't seen each other in a couple years. He was in Tampa, and she's coming in the locker room, and she goes, oh, nice to meet you, Rob. I'm like, you know him. Next day, I bring her to school. I go, you don't remember Rob Gronkowski? She goes, that's Gronk. I'm like, yeah, it's Gronk. You said his name was Rob. It's so funny to hear the little kids, like your nephew. It was freaking. And she goes, that's Gronk. Yeah, I was like, that's Gronk. She goes, can he beat up the John Cena? I was like, yeah, he could beat up the John Cena.
Oh, I could definitely beat up the John Cena, 100%.
Yeah, I didn't even thought about that. That'd be a good little side. We used to do that back at ESPN, where we look at an old roster and then I'd ask Teddy Bruschi and be like, could you beat up this guy? Bruschi was the wrong guy to pick, because Bruschi was going to say he could beat up everybody. But then when you got Bruschi on one where he'd be like, I don't know. And I was like, oh my God, Bruschi said he doesn't know about a guy,
Yes.
It wasn't as much fun as we did it with the quarterbacks, unless they were delusional. Look, I think the cool thing, and I've got one last thought here, and we'll finish up, but what you were talking about and what I've always admired about the great teams is football's so hard, right? It's hard for a million reasons. It's hard for a ton of obvious reasons. But I remember just certain games where I'll watch, and it's all the series that don't go well. And you come back to the sideline and you're like, this sucks. We can't move the ball. We're not blocking. We're not getting open, and it's just a grind. But the great teams are still in the game. You know what I mean? The great teams, like some of these Mahomes games from last year, and for them to be undefeated this season, it's just that, one, it's the confidence of already being successful, but to not give up mentally, right? To not give up mentally when the first 3 hours has been absolutely miserable. There's no other sport like that. And it's so cool to see the great teams. How the hell are they still in this? And it's because when they come back out for the next series, they think they're going to win. And it's just really rare. It's really, because it's such a hard sport to just still be like, I'm having the best time and we still have a chance, to be getting your ass kicked and nothing's worked for 3 hours.
Yeah, usually the best teams, that's when I look at a contender, it's usually the teams that have that mental toughness, doing what's best for the team when it may not be best for you. That was something that was always put in our hallway in New England. And a lot of these teams, like when you have a guy like Patrick Mahomes, we had Tom Brady, you know, in their resume, they've been down and they've won it before. So like that one factor, you're down 10 points in the fourth quarter. Well, they can literally remember a time that they were down 10 points and they won. So like it's almost like that theory where the person who broke the mile, the 4-minute mile, the first time that anyone ever did that, a year later, 35 people did it because they knew it could be done. And it's kind of like that with the quarterback. If the quarterback thinks you can do it and is really confident in it, then everyone else is going to fall in line. And that's what you're seeing with Kansas City. And that's what we had in New England, where, our best player, our highest paid player, always worked his balls off, always was the first one in, always held everyone accountable, was always great at the podium, was a guy that never pointed fingers, only pointed thumbs. And that's what, that's what you're seeing.
And all right, go ahead, Ron. Yeah.
Oh, and just a quick note as well, like what a team, what makes a team great and makes a team a contender is that they're not beating themselves. There's many games won and lost in this league because the team beats themselves. They don't protect the ball. They make a mistake when the mistake should have never been made. They didn't properly manage the clock when it should have been managed, properly. So just those little tiny details of not letting the team win because you beat yourself is what makes a good team great.
You can't win till you keep from losing.
There you go.
Okay, last thing, in the spirit of dudes on dudes, give me Gronk, give me an Edelman scouting report, but just based on vibes, not the player. Vibes, road trip, in the locker room, and then Edelman can give it for Gronk.
Oh, like you're talking Edelman? Just I'm breaking down Edelman outside.
Not the player.
Not the player.
Vibes.
The guy,
right. Yeah,
the vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, oh man, well, he's definitely a dude's dude on top of it. He's in two different categories, but you got to figure it out into one category because you're not allowed to have two categories. He's a dude's dude. He's going on the road trip with you. He's sitting next to you. He's telling wonderful stories with you. He's going into the bar with you. That's a dude's dude, but he's also a dog because he's going to get down and dirty on the dance floor. He's going to go around and be fearless in whatever aspect you want him to be fearless in off the field. So I either choose Julian between being a dog off the field or being a dude's dude. And I feel like he leans more towards a dude's dude because he's always there for you when it comes down to it.
That was good. That was very thorough. Jules, I mean, the Gronk one, the line is he's never had a bad day. I still would be fascinated to spend the day with Gronk on the one bad day he has a year.
Hey, Julian, my dance moves are freaky now. Come on now. Come on.
So
the world knows it.
Dudes, our concept is we're going to talk about a guy or a girl or a dude for 10 minutes, and then we're going to determine what kind of dude they are. And there's a different sets of dudes. There's the freak, the stud, the dog, the whiz, and a dude's dude. For Gronk, on and off the field, he's just a freak. Just because, the first time I met him, I saw him. I've told this story a million times, but we're at this club bar.
It doesn't get old.
This bar club place called Splash, and this lady's walking with a platter of shrimp and fries, and you see this tall dude just out of nowhere take a handful of fries, slams them in his mouth, takes his shirt off, and you watch him do this dance thing that he does. And this was before anyone knew Gronk was Gronk, and you're like, this dude's crazy. He's a freak. Because you've never seen someone that tall or big move that way. So Rob is for sure a freak.
I would agree with freak. I want to let me know when you guys do the Fred Warner episode, because I think he checks a lot of boxes when you're talking about it. And look, man, you guys are great on Fox. You can see Jules with his stuff, games, names, and of course, Dudes on Dudes out every week, Thursdays during the NFL season. Gronk, we got to get you down to the beach and have you work out in the mass station. So let me know when we can line it up.
Yeah, let's do it, man. I heard you're a big guy in the weight room now lately. I heard you're being a dog lately in that weight room, putting some muscle mass on. You got a six-pack almost coming through.
I don't know.
Whiz.
I think that's a compliment. I'm going to take it.
You are a whizzo.
This is someone who's like innovative, that knows all the answers, that, you know, he's pretty clutch.
Clutch. I like that.
Like the little kid in, you remember Little Giants? The little kid that came up with the annexation of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, wasn't he like really nerdy though?
Yeah, but he's still the whiz.
Gronk. Well, come on.
All right, you're not. You're a non-nerdy whiz.
I took my shirt off at the reunion for college, and guys were like, "What the fuck?" So I think I'm in the free category.
No, you're a whiz. You're a whiz.
That sucks. That sucks. All right, whatever. You know, look, you guys vote on it. I got to take it. I'm a whiz.
You can work your way into the free category. We'll give you another year.
All right. You know what, though? I don't know if I aspire to be a freak anymore, but we'll try. We'll try. You guys are the best, man. I love catching up with you, and congrats on the new pod, all right?
Appreciate it, man.
The Alliance, chugging through it. Couple tough ones last week, 2-2 on the board. Kyle has a big smile on his face. I don't know what's going on. I'd heard something about the odds czar. Was that because Ceruti's not here? Is there some? Are we entering a phase where somebody is getting hosed on the alt line, where if somebody else takes something first, and then it's still in the plus 400, plus 450 parameters, somebody else feels like, is there animosity amongst the group because we've not hit the Alliance yet this year? That's what I'm just wondering.
I don't know. It just feels like a fun storyline for the podcast. Me and Roots at odds, but yeah, I don't know. He's just always like, it's hard enough to hit these fours, and I was just, if it's in the low plus 400s, is that really that much different? If it's plus 450, I know 10 numbers wise, yes, but the goal is to get these to hit. So, you know, I'm using my own brain power here, and then Ceruti comes back and says it's not good enough. So, you know, that's all. I just thought it'd be a fun little storyline for the Alliance arc, if there was a little animosity.
Okay,
but he's my guy. Love Roots.
All right, no, you guys are good. Okay, Wargon, you want to lead us off with your pick?
Yeah, before we get going, I think we got to talk about something else. I got 4 in a row right now. I feel like we were talking about Kyle being on a row when he was at 3. I'm at 4.
That's awesome. Didn't know that. Public knows it.
I think I'm getting hot.
Yeah, that's incredible, dude. 4-0. That's all. What's your record right now?
5-2.
5-2. So you're leading the contest.
Could use some help from the gang, is what I'll say.
That's my stuff. Don't take that's my arc. That's my arc.
Anyway. All right. So let's give out Ceruti's pick first, because he's not here today. He's got a simple one. He's just going Rutgers money line against UCLA. That's paying out minus 184. I'm going USC minus 3.5 against Maryland. I don't love the West Coast team coming east, but Maryland kind of stinks. They just lost by 27 to Northwestern, 14 to Indiana the week before.
That's a lot. That's a lot to lose to Northwestern by.
It's a lot to lose to Northwestern by. USC's 1-3 in the Big Ten, which I don't love, but I feel like they've lost to better teams than Maryland so far. So I feel pretty confident laying the 3.5.
Okay, Kyle.
All right. Well, last week was a bit of a heartbreaker, and I feel like I covered my tracks a little bit here. So Alabama is favored in this game at Tennessee, and I looked at the alt spread, and you can get plus 1.5 Alabama at minus 178. So I think that kind of covers us both way a little bit, unless, of course, they lose by a field goal, and we'll be right back here. But I just like that better than, I think they're minus 3 or something. So anyway, I just took them plus 1.5, and it's, it gets us in Ceruti's favorite odds area. So we're all good here.
Okay. And I can go Texas money line. Like, I threw Texas minus 4.5 in the mix just to have a play on the biggest game of the weekend. But I can go Texas money line, which is minus 205 right now in FanDuel.
I don't think that's allowed.
Yeah. So everyone else is a little bit below 200. So
yeah. Well, the
last person that makes the pick, you can sort of let them go a little above,
Okay. But when I sent in the pick this morning, what was I told? Do you want Texas money line? And I said, okay, fine. All right.
It helps to pick last,
All right. Well, then that means I got to go first next week, because that's not fair. And I'll get it right. So we'll be good. We'll be back. Let's see if we can do it this week.
So we can help Wargon out here.
Yeah. As much as the Alliance has been disappointing, this whole approach where I was like, hey, let's do something where it's what I see. Let's do something against the public bet. let's do something with an informed opinion from someone in the desert. This has been a fucking disaster. Couch is over. That's so hard to do. Couch is terrible. The public money thing has been bad. And the only thing that I think is in the plus is Sharp, right? Wargon, I don't know if you have the stats.
I just have last week.
That's fine.
Need Ceruti back. We need Ceruti back.
Yeah, Ceruti's on top of this stuff. So it went 0 for 3 last week. All right. The public play, everybody's on the Eagles. You're taking the Giants plus 3.5. The couch play, I like Detroit plus 1.5. They opened at minus 3.5 at Minnesota. It's actually a very public play, but it just kind of feels like the division game. Vikings finally take a loss. You're getting the plus side of things with Detroit. So that's the couch play. And the sharp play is Jets -2 at Pittsburgh. Something to do with the lead ref. The lead ref is 53-38 against the spread to the road team historically. So that to me is usually just the randomness of somebody has to have something that's outside. So again, there's just an against the spread for road teams with this guy being the lead official. All right, there you go. Good luck.
You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Our email address, as always, lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Yes, I will read The Little Island for the parents out there. I still haven't read the book. I meant to. I should probably do it now because I clearly dealing with something after a bunch of flights. What's up, Kyle? Just Kyle and I today. Is Wargon going to jump in?
And a Johnny's win. And a Johnny's win.
And a Johnny's win. All right. I don't think Wargon's jumping in. Ceruti is off. Couple announcements. One, hit us up, Friday feedback, rr@gmail.com. If you have any feedback, good or bad, we're here. We're just trying to get better. And secondly, we have a specific life advice for all you young studs out there wanting to take on the Hollywood scene. So it's an actor's. We could try to make it like movies and TVs. But my neighbor, Ed Quinn, introduced to me through one of the most interesting men in the world, Max Bretos. His buddy is Ed Quinn, who was in Two Broke Girls. He was in a bunch of stuff, actually. He's been an actor now, like a working actor for a really long time. He's also like in a band, and he was my neighbor for a really long time.
This guy's ripped. I just Googled him. First thing comes up, American actor and model, shirtless.
Yeah, he's not messing around. Like he's kind of a make-believe guy. Like he studied with Joe Satriani. Apparently, he's in the Oval now for Tyler Perry. He's been part of that franchise forever. He played football at Cal, or maybe it was rugby. I'm not sure. And then he was a model. Then he was an actor. Then he was in a band. So I don't know. Like you want to talk about when your boy Russillo doesn't feel like, when I get baited out, it's a tough spot for me. He's bigger than me. So anyway,
vibes, this guy.
Yeah.
You ever seen a side by side of those? That's pretty close.
Of who?
Bradley Cooper.
He would destroy Bradley Cooper.
What, in a fight?
I mean, oh yeah.
I'm not talking about fights.
Oh, sorry.
Just saying the handsome level, they got similar bone structure.
I'm kidding. Yeah, similar bone structure. So we'll intro him that way. What was the vampire show on HBO?
True Blood.
True Blood. He was in True Blood too. So if you have actresses specific questions, we've been planning on having them come on the pod forever, but we just didn't figure out a time to do it in person. Just put Ed Quinn in the title and we'll bang out like 5 or 6 of those after we talk about his awesome life, which should just motivate you. You shouldn't be mad about it. You should be like, I want to get better. All right. That was quite the announcement there. Yes, also Friday feedback. All right, let's get to some emails. Kyle, how you feeling today?
Feeling great. Like I said, Johnny's win. Never been more excited for a London game. You know, it's all kind of coming together.
Okay, yeah, early London game. You're going to stay in on Saturday night, so you get up bright and early for that one?
I'm usually in on Saturday night anyway. You know this about me.
Yeah, no, my bad. It's Saturdays. Saturdays are for rookies. All right. Am I addicted to video games? 6'4", 190, a lot of length, 225 bench, 275 squat. I hadn't squatted, like real squatted, for the longest time because it just was starting to hurt. And then I did it, and I was like, God, this is not fun when you're not good at it anymore.
It's like one of the most daunting things to start once you've been away for a while, I feel like.
Yeah, but it wasn't like I hadn't been doing legs religiously.
Oh,
anyway,
I'm not talking about you. I'm just saying for the, the civilians out there. I feel like it's one of the hardest things to be like, yeah, I'm going to do this today instead of anything else. Because you can always trick yourself into doing something else.
Totally agree, Kyle. Well said. All right, player comp, Draymond Green, undersized big, high B-ball IQ who can't help talking shit at the LA Fitness even though I'm an adult. Growing up, I always played multiple sports, always been outdoorsy, and thought the kids that played video games all day were super lame. To each their own, I guess, but those kids always seemed unhappy. I don't know, man. That might have been, I loved the vids back in the day. But maybe I was overall unhappy. I hadn't really thought about it that way. Thank you. Thank you for opening up my mind to what that meant. I would love to just bang out college football all the time, but, don't have time for it. About 2 years ago, my buddy and I took up the game of golf, and now I'm down to a 17 handicap, which I am proud of. This summer, my buddy and neighbor built his own golf simulator in his wood shop. It's a dream. Whoa. We often play 3 rounds of 18 each time I go over there. No walking, obviously, but that's still a lot of swings. My wife doesn't love it and has oftentimes complained about how much I golf. And even that was before I played the simulator. We are addicted. I've always thought of it as playing a sport, but the other day I had a thought. We are basically just indoors all day playing video games. Winters in Seattle are rough, so it does have an appeal on a rainy day. Am I any different from the guys playing Halo or Call of Duty all day, or am I playing golf? Love the pod. Wow. This is an immediate no for me, but I just wonder if it's a no or Golf Guy justifies that this is a lot cooler because I'm improving my game. But are you trying to tell me the guy hitting a hot route on EA Sports isn't also trying to improve his game? So this really feels like the answer will be whatever the person is interested in seems less negative.
I mean, this thing is cool. It's like, I don't know if you'd call it cutting edge, but for the regular guy who's just got a PlayStation or an Xbox.
The layman?
Yeah, you're right. For a regular guy who just, has one of the, regular consoles, this is like unbelievable. Maybe this will wear off. I don't know how long he said he's been doing this. Is it like been a year strong of, I mean, listen, just a video game without a controller it's like if there's a bar that has golden tea, I'm pretty like,
right.
It's just I'm not getting anything else done. I mean, not that I'm like taking care of business at the bar or anything, but like, it's just cool. It's different. You don't always get a chance to do this. And the other thing I would say is in a world where couch co-op games are just not getting made, you're playing with a buddy. It's not like you're, home with your headset on, listening to terrible remarks from strangers on the internet. It's you and your buddy hanging out. If your wife just thinks you're using your time wrong, that's one thing, but I don't think it's the same as, getting on Call of Duty for, 9 hours and then, coming out of the room. I understand it's inside. But yeah, it's not the same. I don't know what it is, but it's not the same. Something about like non-traditional video games is just awesome anyway. So I would say maybe this wears off and it's not something you want to do you think about all the time when you have free time. But if this has been 2 years now or whatever, then maybe it's just your favorite thing. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, it's 2 years. The Seattle factor is big for me. It's big for me.
As in what? You can't always be out on the links?
Yeah, right. You're probably losing a lot of rounds to the rain. So, see, the problem is the wife. Like, it's not Halo, all right? You're not in your 30s going over your buddies being like, I've been playing Halo at my friend's house for like 2 hours a time, for like 2 straight years. Like, your wife would probably have a pretty good position on being like, are you seriously going to keep doing this, right? The golf thing feels more adult. But in her eyes, it's no different than Halo. She just thinks you're sitting there with your buddies, she doesn't realize that you want that 17 to be an 8 one day. Like, she doesn't understand that. You know, she looks at it as like, how many skins do you have?
Right.
Like, cool, nerd. That's just going to be a disconnect that I'm not sure you can quite get over. But I'm more likely to rule that you're improving your golf game. But I don't know if that's because I'm saying that because I'd rather golf than play video games.
You could develop another more serious problem and then use the golf game as a way to get away. I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But,
What?
Just like develop like a fake gambling problem. Be like, the golf's the only thing that keeps it at bay. I'm just kidding. That wouldn't work. But
remember when I was doing meth? Right. You know?
Well, I found video games as a way to like not go out and spend money. But I think you can definitely get to the other side of that spectrum where it's taken away from other things. But I don't know. It just sounds like she doesn't like the way you have fun. And I don't know if that's going to change.
Yeah, but I think the other thing that happens with addiction like this is that I don't know that I was addicted to playing video games, but I also didn't have anything else going on. So it was fine. And I also loved it as like a mental decompression. So I'll never really criticize video games. You know, if Cloud Strife had a mission, that was a way for he and I to hang out and, you know, bang out 2 hours while I listen to Japanese simulations. Trying to explain it to my girlfriend when she would be like, are you like, we'd come home from a night out and I'd be like, I'm going to fire up a little Final Fantasy. And she's like, are you like,
talk about nerd?
Yeah, right. The only problem is I was considered so cool back then that it was like impossible.
It's bringing your ranking down.
Yeah. She's like, I don't know what to do. Cause like, he's like the cool guy, but he's also a fucking loser. So yeah, I don't know.
What does she think of his friend, do you think? I was just thinking in my head, would it be worse if he had built it in his garage and he had access to it all the time? Or is it worse because she's like, where are you going? So I feel like in relationships, some partners could just be like, they'd be happy if you were just at home doing the thing. But because you're out, there might be just like a little bit of like, I like this a little less. I wonder if it would be worse if he had access to it all the time, but he stays on the property. Or if she's like, there he's going again. I don't know what they're really doing over there. They probably are golfing, but who knows? I wonder if some people better or worse.
It sounds like it'd probably be worse if he had it at his house because he'd be using it even more. Like at least the distance here prevents.
But how many times is he traveling that 1.5 miles to go over there? I wonder if she's just like, God, this is different, and I don't like it.
It sounds pretty classic. He's doing something without her, and then she thinks it's stupid.
Yeah.
So there we go. Heard that one before. All right. Tarps off for Russillo. Oh, does Ryan shave his chest? That's a no. It's not Tom Selleck over here, but you know, it just developed a little. Some people don't like it. Some people like it. But people wonder if I shave my. What the fuck is this? Male, 32, 6 foot, 180, can still dunk a basketball. There you go. A little bit of background for the ask. I got sick a few weeks ago, and after getting sick, I have a lingering cough that I can't shake. So I bought some Vicks Vapo Rub to lather on the old body. I'm hairier than most, so after applying the rub a few times, the thought crossed my mind that if I trimmed the trees, the rub would make better contact with the skin, chest, and ultimately got to my lungs a little easier. So last night, I did just that. Flash forward to today, I wake up, throw on a shirt, and instantly regret my decision. Many thoughts crossed my mind, but I boiled them down to just more than a handful. One, how can this itch this much? This doesn't make sense. I'm scratching like I'm Tyrone Biggums. Number two, how come I've never heard about how itchy you get trimming your chest hair? Number three, there should be a site to learn about these things, sometimes along the lines of brothers helping brothers. Oh, wait, that's basically life advice. Five, I haven't heard, that was 4. 5, I haven't heard something like this on there. 6, is this why Russillo always goes tarps off? If so, I wonder if he has any pointers on how to make this not itch anymore besides not just wearing a shirt. No, I don't know. I try not to wear a shirt around the house. So, or other places. But you ever shave your chest, Kyle?
No, I got accused of shaving my legs. I'm just not a hairy guy in high school. And it was really kind of got in my head. I just had,
That's traumatic. When it comes to like, I'm a boy, maybe a man hair discussions in high school, that can fuck you up big time.
Yeah,
like, I didn't have the armpit hair until a lot later than dudes, and boy, was that uncool.
Well, it's so uncool. But you find later in life, it's like, I think it was preferred once I got towards, college and upwards. It was just like, oh, he's not like this beast. Like I got not much, and it's blonde. What I have, the legs haven't really improved.
George
that much.
Animal Steel. You know?
Yeah, but I do have these weird wispies on my chest, and I was like, this doesn't fit the picture. I don't know what it is. It's like it's
little wispies.
It's darker hair. It's like long. I don't know. I just never really touched it. Maybe because that dude was like, "You shave your legs, don't you?" It was in gym class. I was like, "No, man." He's like, "Hey, this guy shaves his legs," and I was like, "No, I just got less than you, man." But yeah, so maybe that's like psychologically why I haven't touched what I got going on in the center here. But it's just it doesn't fit everything else I have going on. So I don't know.
Take a picture of your chest and send it to the guy and be like, "Check out this shit, dude."
You're right. I mean, is it like maybe this guy went like against the grain and he should have gone with the grain? Is that like, I know like when you're shaving your face, you know, you try to have a plan. I wonder if maybe he didn't have a plan and he just, you know, went the wrong way, got some tugging action going on and he's got some bumps.
I think I did it once because I wanted to see if I looked more jacked. That was last week. No, I'm just kidding. It was a long time ago. And it was like somebody put duct tape, like double-sided duct tape on the shirt and my chest. So it sucked. And so I don't know, like I know there's guys that just shave it all the time. And so maybe that's the deal. We can't help.
Also,
sure
maybe you want to
Ceruti,
buzz it first, right? Because I know if you try to shave like a long hair, you get a lot of tugging action too. So maybe he didn't like buzz.
Yeah, but we're talking post-shave trauma.
Right.
You
but
know?
I mean, I'm wondering if maybe like he should have like, you know, took the one guard and got it all down first and then went with the razor.
Could you just rub Nair all over yourself?
Did that
still making that?
Did that once in high school.
How did that go?
Well, I don't really want to say what I think I left it.
We got it.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
My parents were like, "Why the fuck?" Because they just saw the bottle and they were like, "You look normal." And I was like, "Well, let's just not talk about it anymore."
Wow, that's a new one. Hey, Wargon, you want to chime in here? It seems like we need another. You shave your chest?
No, never shaved my chest.
You a hairy guy?
My fiance just walked in the room and now she's giving me this weird look.
Looking at your face, it looks like you probably got a lot going on, though, right?
Oh, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
Is that true?
No, not really, but
no.
Looking at your face, you look pretty hairy. Yeah, look, I don't think Kyle was totally wrong. I don't know what to do. We got a fiance in the mix. All right, so you don't shave your chest, so you have nothing to add.
Never have, never will. Yeah.
Is that
like
one day? Is that one day on your face there? When's the last shave?
No. 4 or 5 days, maybe.
Oh, all right. I take it back.
Yeah, sorry to disappoint.
That's what threw him off. He thought he had a noon shadow going on Eastern Standard Time. If that were a noon shadow, but again, I don't expect Wargon to be fresh and clean, ready to go every single day working on a podcast. All right. Well, thanks for your help, Wargon.
You got it, man. Anytime.
All right.
Always here for your chest shaving questions.
Yeah. Do we go? We don't do this a lot, but do we check the old Google machine? It's probably going to send me back to StatMuse to tell me what Eddie House's field goal percentage was at Arizona State.
It's a BS pod joke right there.
Yeah. Can I stop? I don't know. Shaving my chest? Maybe that's the wrong way to go. Male. Yeah, we're going to put male in there. Yeah, right.
Shave with the grain. By the way, I just Googled. Google AI was very helpful. I just said proper way to shave chest. Exfoliate first. Use cream. I don't know. He didn't say if he dry shaved or not. I doubt he did. But it says shave with the grain. Avoid too much pressure. Maybe he didn't moisturize after.
Apparently, yeah. I guess there's a moisturizing deal here. Hydrocortisone cream. I don't know, man. Good luck. We weren't super helpful on that one. Okay, one more update here. I know I did it, and I know it hurt, and so I have nothing to offer you. And to be honest with you, when I shaved, I didn't look that much more jacked.
I'm glad you answered that. I was wondering what you thought.
Yeah, I know. I'd seen something on the instant messenger. It was like, hey, you didn't follow through with the rest of that. Okay, remember we had our guy talking about Garth, his coworker, who wouldn't stop. Remember, he wouldn't stop asking him to do stuff. Today at lunch, Garth invited me to watch USC Penn State game in a few weeks. So that was September 24th. That game just happened. By the way, hell of a game. At that moment, I thought of Kyle's advice and decided to pull the trigger. I said, appreciate the invite, but I got to be honest, I'm not going to be able to hang out after work at all. He said, quote, like ever. I said, quote, yes.
Right.
He sat back in his chair, packed up his lunch, and left after 8 to 10 seconds of awkward silence. I've crossed the Rubicon. Hopefully this doesn't come back to haunt me. Well, we had shared that update with you.
Yes.
Well, we got another update. Garth asked me to take him hunting today.
That's the one place I would never say yes to go with Garth after that face-losing incident.
We're back at square one. Yeah. I wouldn't go hunting with him because he might hate you so much after the Penn State thing. Look, I had a buddy go look at a piece of land in Colorado, and the guy was like, I think, hoping to push him off a cliff and kill him. And there was some title thing. No, I'm serious. Like, the guy's wanted. He's still on the loose. I wanted to have him on to come on and talk about it on the podcast. The story was so crazy.
Like a Deadwood situation?
Yeah, he's serious. Yeah, exactly, Kyle. Great recall.
Love that show.
Incredible recall on Deadwood. Let's go out and take a look at this claim. Maybe. And so, yeah, I think my buddy was out there, and then the guy was going to shove him off of this cliff. And it's a great story because he didn't get shoved off the cliff. And his wife, I think his wife was like vehemently against it. I think I was trying to negotiate in the kitchen. I was like, it'd be a great story. It'd be great for the pod. Maybe a little exposure. She's like, I don't want you advertising that this guy that's like wanted tried to throw you off a cliff.
Wanted? Well, that's a wrinkle.
She's like, that'd come back to me or whatever. I was like, whatever. I'm dealing with death threats from Raptors fans right now. Those fucking lunatics. Okay. That is the podcast for today. Thanks, Wargon. You did help, even if you didn't think you did.
Happy to help. Yeah.
I'm getting some weird vibes from Wargon right now. I'm not sure how this is going.
I just don't think he wanted his, like, camera moment to be like that intimate of a question, which I don't blame him.
You know what I was actually just thinking about? I had a professor in college got pushed off a cliff. So that was what was running through my head.
Table that.
Maybe a different pod. Yeah.
Yeah. Table that. But let's
bit of a love triangle.
Let's talk about that later.
Former professor? All right, we'll be done. I don't know. I think everyone gets A's. Is that how it works? I don't know.
For aspiring thespians, Ed Quinn in your subject. And Friday feedback rr@gmail.com. We have to do one of those for YouTube only. And Ceruti will be back. Yeah. All right. Thanks to everybody. Whatever. Enjoy the weekend. We're back on Monday. Ryen Russillo podcast, YouTube page, and Ringer Spotify.